Is there a legitimate chance to a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. presidency? I contest, maybe. How can RFK Jr. win the election? And does he have a realistic chance to become the 47th president of the United States? A little background on me. I'm a registered independent, and during the 2020 election cycle, I unregistered from the Republican Party for the obvious orange reason. And even if I realized that I had a lot of conservative leanings in most of my political persuasions on most issues, life is a lot more nuanced than having to agree with everything that your political team wants, which I didn't and don't. But that's not why you click this video. So RFK, in his own words, effectively stated this.
Let me ask you a wonky electoral college question, right? I mean, isn't the most likely kind of best case scenario that you win some of the smaller states? You get those electoral votes. And in a close race, that could mean, in effect, though, you deprive a Trump or a Biden of the necessary 270 votes that either would need to win, right? That would mean the election effectively goes to former President Trump, since it would then go to the state houses. A majority of state legislatures are controlled by Republicans. I mean, I'm sure this is an issue you have thought about, because you've made it clear that, your goal is certainly not to help Donald Trump. You've said that you think you actually hurt Donald Trump more than help him. But if you were to take enough electoral college votes and neither Trump or Biden got the necessary number, then you are kind of giving the election to Donald Trump, no?
We don't think so, Dan. If no candidate gets 270 votes, it goes to a contingent election. In the contingent election, the Senate chooses the vice president and the House chooses the president. But according to the rules of the 12th Amendment, each state gets one vote.
Right.
And the congressional delegation has to agree on it. And if you actually look at the composition of the congressional delegations, there's no way that they'll be able to agree on it. The Republicans have a 9-state advantage. So if you just said, okay, that states get to vote red or blue, but there's a lot of delegations that are split. Like, for example, Minnesota. And the Democrats are never going to vote for Trump, and the Republicans are never going to vote for Biden. They'll lose their careers. So we think it's going to end up with a compromise candidate, and we think that that's going to be me.
So before we get off into the weeds, I want to list the demographics that are favorable to Robert F. Kennedy and third-party options. So not necessarily in this order, but they go as followed: independents, Native Americans, Latter-day Saints, and vaccine skeptics. And they don't necessarily overlap in very many things. Those are four very different groups of people. So if we compare Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s run in 2024 to Ross Perot's run in 1992, there are some breadcrumbs that he left behind that may help us understand where RFK has a legitimate chance of winning electoral college votes. So Ross Perot came in second in the state of Utah, second in the state of Maine, and second in Nebraska District 3, a narrow third in Alaska, a narrow third in Kansas, and a narrow third in Idaho, and a distant third literally everywhere else. So RFK Jr. opened up his VP announcement rally with chants and speeches from various indigenous tribal leaders, and his particular laser focus on the environment is a prime concern for Native Americans, as it should be for all of us. Only 60% of Native Americans that are 18 or older are registered to vote, so it's a potential voter block that currently belongs to no one, and I think tends to lean favorably toward RFK and his skepticism of our government, and also his love of the environment, which RFK has been a champion of for the last 70 years, which is how long he's been alive. Latter-day Saints, and there are a few breadcrumbs that help us to understand this voter block. I'm a Latter-day Saint myself. We tend to lean conservative. However, in 2016, Evan McMullin was on the ballot in just 11 states and garnered roughly 0.5%, or 1 out of 200 Americans in the national vote, but nearly took second in the state of Utah with 21% of the vote. So it's important to note that he is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints himself, which is headquartered in Salt Lake City. He was from Utah, campaigning mostly in Utah. That said, for someone who spent $1.5 million compared to Hillary, who spent nearly $800 million, to beat her, or to nearly beat her anywhere, is still impressive. So his campaign was simple and similar to RFK's. You don't have to vote for the lesser of two evils. There's a better way to vote. He did make a very important distinction, and it's why I chose to make this video in a lot of ways, and it's here what we're talking about now.
But now, with just 15 days to go until the election, we got a twist. I want to tell you about it. So you've got the blue and the red. You're used to this. The blue states for the Democrats, the red states for the Republicans. This election is so crazy and is so topsy-turvy, we're going to have to add a new color today. Gray, by the way, gray, that's the toss-up. But take a look what's happening in one state in particular, and that's not what was supposed to happen there. Take a look at what is happening in Utah. Here's the latest poll out of there. Donald Trump clinging to a 1-point lead, but second place is not Hillary Clinton. Second place is Evan McMullin. Evan McMullin is a former staffer for the Republicans in Congress, a former CIA operative. He is running in second place in Utah. He has the possibility of defeating Donald Trump, winning Utah. And if Evan McMullin were to do that, then we would have to have a new color on this map. Not blue, not red, dark gray. I was hoping it would be green or something, but it's going to be dark gray. And the last time a state went for somebody who wasn't a Democrat or a Republican in a presidential election, you got to go all the way back to 1968. That's when George Wallace, he was the segregationist. He won a bunch of states in the South running as an independent that year. Now, look, but if things were to change down the stretch in this race, if Donald Trump were to recover some of that strength he lost in the last few weeks, if he were to run the table in these toss-up states right now, check this out. If Trump were to win these states that are toss-ups right now, give him Iowa. He does look good there. Arizona, he's got to worry about it. Nevada, let's say he were to win that. Well, take a look. Clinton would have 268. Trump would have 264. And if McMullin wins Utah, he's sitting there on 6. And what do you notice? Nobody gets to 270. And you know what happens if nobody gets to 270 in a presidential election? Then the race is decided by the House of Representatives. Congress gets to pick the president, and that is one of the ideas behind the Evan McMullin campaign. They feel if they could get this thing to the House of Representatives, that the Republicans in the House of Representatives wouldn't want Trump, wouldn't want Clinton, they would want McMullin.
So his sole aim was to prevent either candidate from getting to 270 electoral votes. Doing so would make it very difficult for a polarized House of Representatives to circle the wagons on a president the other 50% of the House was vehemently opposed to. As we learned from 1992, it's not just important to compete, you have to win states. Ross Perot got roughly 19% of the national vote, but won absolutely not a single electoral college vote, because it doesn't matter if you come in second everywhere, you have to win somewhere. And so with that, what are states that RFK Jr. could realistically win? Not this pipe dream like somehow some political tide swings for him and every celebrity starts to rep for him. What are states that he could realistically win based on the voter blocks who tend to draw to him favorably? Number one is the state of Alaska. It recently approved ranked choice voting, which is going to play heavily in some of the things I'm going to talk about, along with having the largest number of national parks of any state, the largest percentage of their population being indigenous at around 20%. It's a state that Bobby can reasonably appeal to the people that they can vote for someone that they actually believe in without the consequence or fear that their vote will help someone that they don't want to get elected. It would take too much time in this video to discuss how ranked choice voting works. If you've never heard of it, if you're not familiar with it, I implore you to pause this video and go search for an in-depth video on ranked choice voting to understand why this is monumental in RFK's chance to win electoral votes. I would argue if RFK does not win the state of Alaska, he will not win a single state. It's important to note that along with some of the other things that I suggested, that only 64% of Alaska was vaccinated for COVID-19. Vaccine skeptics tend to be drawn to RFK because of his well-known vaccine hesitancy or skepticism. To call him an anti-vaxxer is a bit disingenuous, because he said that he has every vaccine on the vaccine schedule, as well as all of his children. He just has had a bit of hesitancy regarding the COVID vaccine, because he felt that there wasn't enough data to support its effectiveness or efficacy. Number 2 is the state of Maine, for the same aforementioned reason as Alaska, that they have ranked choice voting on as part of their election process. It has been there for many years, and they have split delegates as well. So at least one district could vote one way, and so they have 3 total electoral college votes, and 2 could go one way and 1 can go the other way, which means he wouldn't even necessarily have to win the entire state to get a piece of the pie. People in Maine understand ranked choice voting, they value it, and it gives candidates in the state of Maine, like Ross Perot's second place showing in 1992, an opportunity to have their voice heard in a way that isn't available in the other 49 states aside from Alaska. It is worthy to note that 82% of their residents were vaccinated for COVID-19, so a little bit different voting block than in the state of Alaska. Number 3 is a very important state. It is the state of Arizona. It is a battleground state. It tends to lean conservative, but they rejected wholeheartedly, or at least in large part, the platform of voter fraud and a stolen election, evidenced by Carrie Lake's well-known defeat for governor to a candidate that was unwilling to debate, that literally didn't leave her basement, did not campaign in any way. It is a high percentage of their voters are Latter-day Saints. A high indigenous population, around 10%, a relatively low COVID vaccination rate at 64%, which means it's possible for him to make inroads in the state to lure both Biden and Trump voters. And I would say this is a very important state. If he is able to win Alaska, this would be another state that he should really be looking to win outright. Number 4 is the state of Utah. Ross Perot came in second, as we mentioned, in the state of Utah. I am a Latter-day Saint myself. I am a one-time Utah resident. I understand this voting block, and I think it deserves a lot of attention. Latter-day Saints, as a body of believers, one of our tenets, one of the things we're taught is the importance of political neutrality. The church does not support any one candidate. They didn't actively campaign or support Mitt Romney in his run, even though they might have encouraged voters to learn about the candidates. And obviously one of them, as a member of our faith, don't necessarily agree with Mitt Romney on many things, but I would say a large percentage of Latter-day Saints did vote for him in 2008. But the church teaches political neutrality, and that we should learn everything we can about all of the candidates, and pleads for us as a people to vote for those who represent our country and our values the best, not necessarily who has the best chance of winning, which is why Ross Perot did garner a lot of support. Evan McMullen was able to do really well in the state of Utah. It has 5 national parks, and there are plenty of state parks and forests, and the demographic, both religious and non-religious, truly value the environment, and it's a message that RFK has that may serve very well here. Number 5 is Idaho, which is basically Utah light. All of the same reasons are found on a smaller scale in the state of Idaho. Again, Ross Perot did very well. He came in a close third in the state of Idaho. Number 6 is a state that's not necessarily a Republican bastion, is Nevada. And there are a lot of disaffected Californians who have fled there, not necessarily for greener pastures, but cheaper ones. And RFK's message about housing affordability with an actual plan and a platform could speak to the hearts of people like myself, who I live in Michigan, but for those who've exited California where they were born and raised like myself, due to it being just too cost prohibitive to raise a family there. Number 7 is my wild card in the election, is the state of Georgia. And before you laugh, just hear me out here. It does not have ranked choice voting, but something Georgia has is an automatic runoff that while the election takes place in November, if none of the candidates reach 50% of the vote, there is an automatic runoff that will take place in January. Okay, now listen and understand how this works. So RFK would have to come in second, and assuming one candidate had a better chance of eclipsing the 270 electoral vote barrier, you better believe the other party would do everything in their power to ensure that the other major party did not win the state. So again, let me give you an example. Let's say Trump were at 255 electoral votes, and Georgia, which has 16 electoral votes, would put him over the edge to 270, and RFK had come in second in the general election in November. You better believe that the DNC would pump as much money as were possible to support and rep it for RFK if it meant preventing Trump to win the presidency outright and giving the Democratic Party a window to secure the presidency in a contingent election, which is really why you're here. It's what RFK believes himself. We're going to talk a little bit about contingent elections. The 12th Amendment was ratified in 1804, shortly after a contingent election with Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. Shout out if you remember that Got Milk commercial from back in the day. Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr in 1800 had a contingent election where no one reached 50% of the vote, or 50% of the Electoral College votes. Since then, the 12th Amendment has been exercised twice, in 1824 famously, and then again in 1836 for vice president. So in 1824, there were 4 candidates who received electoral votes. That means 4 different candidates won states. And though Andrew Jackson won a plurality, he did not win 50% of the electoral votes, and the House in the contingent election elected John Quincy Adams. And the craziest part of the 12th Amendment, which I'm utterly shocked has appeared nowhere on YouTube that I can find. Obviously, if you dig into people that just talk strictly about elections and election cycles and amendments, I probably explained this, but I haven't heard anyone reference this in the 2024 election. And it's kind of the reason I decided to resurrect my channel. I'm going to read to you from Wikipedia.
The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. If no person have such majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the votes be taken by the states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. Now, check this out. Going down a little further, the person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if no person have a majority, then from the 2 highest numbers on the list, the Senate shall choose the vice president. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice.
This means, unless RFK were to come in second in electoral votes, which I think is ridiculously unlikely, it's already going to be difficult for him to win any state. The Senate would be voting between not Nicole Shanahan and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's yet to be named running mate, which I won't even bother speculating here, but only the top 2 electoral vote getters. So it would be between Kamala Harris and let's fill in the blank. Right now, I think the front runner is someone like a Tim Scott. All right, so there is a world that exists where we could get a Donald Trump, Kamala Harris ticket that wins, or a Biden, Tim Scott, or an RFK, Vivek Ramaswamy. Obviously, the permutations narrow down once it's decided who Trump will be running with. But there would be, in the contingent election, there would be, assuming that RFK wins electoral votes and no one gets to 270, it would be Joe Biden, RFK, and Donald Trump as the 3 possible presidents, and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's running mate as the 2 possible vice presidents. Insane world. And why does this matter? So I believe that RFK Jr. picked a running mate, not necessarily because it was someone that he believed would follow him into the White House, and not necessarily someone that was the best fit for him. I know that it's, just recently it was brought to light that Tulsi Gabbard was asked to be his vice president. or his running mate anyways. I think she probably understood that what we're talking about right now, there was really not a path for her to actually be the vice president. RFK needed someone that could help financially bolster up his campaign. So as a private citizen, you can only, you're capped at $3,300 that you can donate to a campaign. But as a running mate, that number is infinity. And the person that is running alongside of him, Nicole Shanahan, has deep pockets. Okay. So though, like I said, I think there were better options for RFK on ideological basis and at least with name recognition based on his principles. I would appeal to you that he understood that that person mathematically would not have the opportunity to become the vice president anyways, and it literally didn't matter who it was, as long as it was not someone that markedly brought down his brand. I could be wrong, but as much as I've listened to RFK, I believe he's more of a realist than an optimist. And so he knew that Nicole Shanahan will not be the vice president no matter what. If all 7 states that I've mentioned swing for RFK, here's what the potential map would look like, in my opinion, right now. So it means that both of the major party candidates would get around 250. It would be more difficult for him to prevent 270 electoral college votes if Nevada and Georgia didn't swing for him. But if they did not, here's what we'd be looking at. So I think RFK's greatest chance to upset the balance of power is by winning Alaska, Utah, and at least a piece of Maine. These are the actual most likely, if we were to actually bet, these are the 3 states that I think he has the greatest chance to win some electoral college votes. Technically, he only needs to win 1 vote in the state of Maine to qualify for a contingent election, but the math that keeping both other candidates from 270 would be insanely slim. So bottom line, the more states he wins, the better his odds of a contingent election become. If I were a betting man, I'd put his chances at a contingent election probably around 10%, which is a lot higher than people are giving him credence for, simply because there were just so many variables between now and November. Indictments, cognitive function of one or both major party candidates, 25th Amendment pursuits by the right, or heaven forbid, in an RIP scenario, right? The average lifespan of white males in America is 75.3 years. Both of the major party candidates are beyond that. Biden is 81, which is insane. Trump is 77, and RFK is the spring chicken at 70. So anyways, thanks for watching, y'all. Let me know what you think. Share this with all of the RFK fans even those who are a bit skeptical about him, but at least like the idea of a third party or more options. So Cornel West or Jill Stein voters, this message is also for you. The more that we can do to give third parties a platform, the better chance we have of disrupting this uniparty system. So even promoting ranked choice voting in your state does more to change the future for elections than pretty much anything else. And most importantly, I know you're not subbed to this channel. I got fewer than 100 subs. So go ahead and sub. And thanks for watching. Have a great day.